Hello everyone. Today what we're going to do is we're going to look at the homework problem I assigned before the midterm. Now I solved a similar problem in QM before the midterm in our last video. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to solve this problem again in QM, but then we're also going to look at how to solve it in Excel. Until now, QM has probably been easier to use, but in general, both programs are good for certain things. QM excels at certain things, Microsoft excels in certain things. As we move into more advanced problems, we're going to see situations where one program is better than the other. There's not necessarily a rule governing when it's better, but we do have to be comfortable using both programs. So, first things first, I'd like you to look at the homework question that I gave last time. I'll read it now. Anna Broderick is the dietitian for the State University football team, and she is attempting to determine a nutritious lunch menu for the team. She has set the following nutritional guidelines for each lunch serving: between 1,500 and 2,000 calories, at least 5 milligrams of iron, at least 20 but no more than 60 grams of fat, at least 30 grams of protein, at least 40 grams of carbohydrates, no more than 30 milligrams of cholesterol. So these are the restrictions we'll be operating under. If our dietary intake is above, below, or not between, then it will automatically be rejected because we need a situation where we have to meet these requirements. So she selects the menu from 7 basic food items as follows, with the nutritional contribution per pound and the cost given. I won't read the title because you do have it in the email I will send, or the picture I will send to our group chat, but the dietitian wants to select a menu to meet the nutritional guidelines while also minimizing the cost. So we know our restraints, we know our input items. What we have to do now is we have to figure out how to input this in QM. So you have the question to look at in your group chat, in our Cacao group chat. So what I'll do now is I'll begin formulating this problem. First thing we do, we click on Module, and we have a linear programming problem, same as we've done before. We click Linear Programming, we hit New. Now, we're going to call this the dietitian example. So let's look at our constraints. The first one is we need between 1,500 and 2,000 calories. That will be 2 constraints. One constraint for above 1,500, one constraint for below 1,500. Our second constraint will be at least 5 milligrams of iron. Our third and fourth constraints will be at least 20, but no more than 60 grams of fat. Our sixth constraint will be 30 grams of protein. Our seventh, at least 40 grams of carbohydrates. And our eighth, no more than 30 grams of cholesterol. So we have not 1, 2, but 8 different constraints governing our situation. Number of variables. We know from looking at the chart that we have 7 decision variables. So we change that here. So we have a total of 7 decision variables, and we have 8 different constraints to take care of. We also know that the dietitian wants to select a menu to meet the nutritional guidelines while also minimizing the total cost. So from the keyword minimizing total cost, we know this is a minimization problem. 8 constraints, 7 variables, minimize. We hit OK. Now, our first situation, our first thing that we do now is we're going to add our 7 different decision variables in. Looking at the chart, we see the first decision variable is chicken. The second, fish. The third, ground beef. The fourth, dried beans. The fifth, lettuce. The sixth, potatoes. The seventh, milk. And it's 2% milk in this situation. So we have that information given to us. We also know how much each one costs per pound. And here it shows minimize, and that's what we're trying to minimize, is the cost of these items. So we know chicken is 0.80, fish is 3.70, ground beef 2.30, oh, sorry. 2.30. We know dried beans are 0.90. Lettuce is 0.75. Potatoes 0.40. And our milk is 0.83. So we've entered our situation. We've entered the scenario where we now have all of the costs recorded. So the computer, when it runs it, can tell us how much our total cost will be, depending on how many of each of these 7 we choose. So the next thing we have to do is enter our first constraint. So our first constraint is minimum calories. And we'll just add 1,500. We'll add it later, but we're putting it here just for simplicity's sake. So our minimum calories is 1,500. We write 1,500 on the right-hand side of the equation. We also know we have a second constraint, max calories. And again, for simplicity's sake, we write it on that side as well. Then, because it's not yet mathematically involved, we enter over here 2,000 calories. Our third constraint is at least, so minimum iron. We require X amount of iron. In this situation, 5 milligrams. So again, to add in the mathematical representation, we add the number 5 over here. After that, constraint number 4 is minimum fat, and it's 20 grams. So at the very minimum, we require 20 grams of fat in our diet. So to enter it mathematically, we add number 20 over here. Next, constraint number 5 is maximum fat. And in this situation from the problem, we know it is 60 grams of fat is our maximum. Next, we have another constraint. In this situation, it is at least, so a minimum of 30 grams, minimum of protein. So we enter it mathematically, minimum 30 grams. Constraint number 7 is at least 40 grams of carbohydrates. So minimum carbohydrates. And in this situation, we know it is 40. So we enter over here, 40. Finally, we have one final constraint, and it's no more than 30 grams of cholesterol. So we make that maximum. And in this situation, we know it's 30 milligrams. Enter mathematically. So what we've done is we've entered what our requirements are. This is the minimum, maximum, or the range of each dietary nutrient. However, we made one small, well, we haven't totally adjusted. So if we see that min and max, we have to come over here to this column. And this column will allow us to show min and max. So if it's a minimum of 1,500 calories, we must be greater than or equal to 1,500. But here, it's a maximum of 2,000. So it must be less than or equal to 2,000. These two lines have shown that we have to be above 1,500, but below 2,000. So we have minimum, which is greater than or equal to, minimum, greater than or equal to. Here it's a maximum. So again, less than or equal to 60. Minimum protein, greater than or equal to. Minimum carbohydrates, greater than or equal to. But one more time, maximum cholesterol. So again, less than or equal to 30 on the right-hand side. So what we've done here is we have entered all of our relevant information. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to enter all of our nutrients. Our nutrients are represented by the table we were given in the problem. So let's look first at calories. Now this is a little confusing because we have to enter calories 2 times. We see that chicken is 520 calories. But we have to enter it here again because we're essentially running the same situation 2 times. We know fish is 500, so we enter it here and here. Ground beef is 860. Dried beans are 600. Oh. Lettuce is very calorie light, so it's only 50. Potatoes are 460. And finally, milk is 240. So what the computer will do in this situation is it will, whatever is chosen, whatever amount of chicken, fish, ground beef, dried beans, lettuce, potatoes, and milk is chosen, it will ensure that that adds up to more than 1,500 calories. But our second equation shows us that it will then make sure that it's still less than 2,000 calories. So what we've shown here is our minimum and maximum calories must be within this range. Next, we move on to iron. And again, we're going to, not this time, we're only going to enter once because we have only the minimum amount of iron. So iron is, chicken is 4.4, fish 3.3, ground beef 0.3, dried beans 3.4, lettuce 0.5, potatoes 2.2, and milk 0.2. So again, what the computer is checking is it will, once the numbers begin coming in, if it is not above 5, if the combination that the computer finds is not above 5 grams of iron, it will reject that possibility. That's what we're telling the computer to do now. So let's continue to the next level. Here we're going to enter 2 times again because fat has both a minimum and a maximum. So we have 30, and be careful when you're looking at the table, make sure you're checking making sure that you're entering the right data in each section. So it was calories, iron, then we skip protein and carbohydrates, and we go right to fat. So 30 and 30. Fish is 5 and 5. Ground beef is 75 and 75. Dried beans are 3 and 3. Lettuce has no fat, so it's 0 and 0, remains as is. Potatoes also have no fat, so it remains 0 and 0. Finally, 2% milk has 10 and 10. Now, what we've seen here, and this is interesting, because we're starting to see some possibilities. If ground beef is 75 grams per pound of fat, and our maximum fat allowable is 60, this automatically means we will have 0 ground beef in our diet. Even 1 pound of ground beef is too much fat. So ground beef will be rejected automatically. We also know that chicken is 30 grams of fat. If our maximum is 60, the total amount possible for chicken, maybe we won't use this, but it could be no more than 2 pounds of chicken. If it was more than 2 pounds of chicken, we would be over 60 total grams of fat, and that would not be allowable in our equation. Continuing on, our minimum for protein, so we enter 1, and it's 17 grams for chicken, 85 grams for fish, 82 grams for ground beef, 10 for dried beans, 6 for lettuce, 10 for potatoes, and finally 16 for milk. We have 2 more column rows to go. Sorry about that. The first one is chicken. For chicken, in terms of carbohydrates, now we have a minimum. It's 0, 0 for fish, 0 for ground beef, 30 for dried beans, 0 for lettuce, 70 for potatoes, and 22 for milk. So in this situation, we've entered that relevant data. The last row is our maximum allowable cholesterol. So 180 for chicken, 90 for fish, 350 for ground beef, 0 for dried beans, 0 for lettuce, 0 for potatoes, and finally 20 for milk. in this situation, we know that it has to be less than 30. Our first three sources, chicken, fish, and ground beef, are all above 30. So we know automatically no fish, no chicken, and no ground beef will be allowed in the diet. We also know milk is a minimum, or milk is 20 by itself. So that milligrams per pound means at the absolute maximum, we can have 1.5 servings of milk. Any more than 1.5 servings, and we're going to be in a situation where we violate the maximum amount of cholesterol. So we know here, from looking at the equations, we know somehow, in some way, our diet will be a combination of dried beans, lettuce, potatoes, and milk. Chicken, fish, and ground beef have automatically been eliminated because they have too much cholesterol. It's a situation where we cannot deal with that. So once all the relevant data has been entered, we simply hit the solve function. And what we see, as we discovered, is that we will have no chicken, no fish, and no ground beef, because those would violate our restriction on cholesterol. We see that we will have 1.67 servings of dried beans, 0.3 servings of potatoes, and 1.5 servings of milk. This will give us our daily minimum and maximum requirements, and it will cost us $2.87 per day. This is what we found using QM. Hopefully everything is very clear. I'm genuinely expect most of you to be able to get this, because at these low levels, QM is very easy to use. I've taken you step by step through it. Hopefully it's very clear now. Thank you very much. We'll come back for section 2 momentarily. Hi again, everyone. In this second section, I'm going to do exactly what I did in the first section. I'm going to solve exactly the same problem. The major difference is, in this situation, I'll be solving it in Excel because we do need a command of both programs. So it is the same problem. We'll receive the same answer. The only difference is I'll be solving it in Excel this time. So first things first, we want to make our dietary dietitian example. And what we're going to do now is we're going to list our decision variables. So in this situation, for simplicity's sake, once again, we'll say products. But let's expand our columns first. So our first product is chicken, fish, ground beef, dried beans, lettuce, potatoes, and milk. It's 2% milk as before. All right, next, cost, because that's what we're trying to minimize in this situation. I'm going a little quicker this time because we've already solved it with the same information. So we've entered our cost variables. Next up, resources, constraints. Our first one is, again, minimum calories, maximum calories, minimum iron, minimum fat, maximum fat, minimum protein, minimum carbohydrates, and maximum cholesterol. So in each of these situations, we know that we have minimums and maximums. So we come over here and we change this to usage because we have to figure out how many we'll use. Constraints and available. So here we know our minimum calories are 1,500. Maximum calories, 2,000. Minimum iron is 5. Minimum fat, 20. Maximum fat, 60. 30 grams of protein minimum. 40 grams of carbohydrates minimum. And 30 grams of cholesterol maximum. So here we add our less than or equal to. So in this situation, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and finally, less than or equal to. So what we've entered here is all of our normal situation things that we go through. So we have to enter how much chicken we get. So again, what we're doing, 520, 520. Fish is 500, 500. 860, 860. $600. Lettuce is 50 and 50. Potatoes 460, 460. Milk 240, 240. So we've shown that whatever we choose of each, it has to be more than 1,500. Whatever we choose of each, it has to be less than 2,000. We repeat with iron, and we have 4.4, 3.3, 0.3, 3.4, 0.5, 2.2, and 0.2. We repeat, and again, because fat has a minimum and max, we're going to enter the data twice. 30, 30, 5, 5, 75, 75, 3, 3, 0, 0, 0, and 10, 10. So we're slowly entering our data. That's what we're doing here. And in this situation, minimum protein is 17, 85, 82, 10, 6, 10, 16. Minimum carbohydrates, 0, 0, 0, 30, 0, 70, 22. The last one to complete it is maximum cholesterol, 180, 90, 350, 0, 0, 0, and 20. So we've entered all of the relevant information here. Now we know here are products, and this is what we're going to be choosing from. The first one is chicken, fish, ground beef, dried beans, lettuce, potatoes, and milk, 2%. And what we are trying to minimize is our total costs. So we've entered all of the relevant data, but like before, now we have to enter in the key formula that will allow Solver to do its job. I will walk you through that now. So total cost is equal to the cost per chicken times total amount of chicken plus cost per fish times total amount of fish plus cost for ground beef times amount of ground beef plus amount of dried beans times ground beans plus, we'll finish that up with these three. Okay, so what we've entered is the total amount of chicken times the price of chicken, plus the total amount of fish times the price of fish, plus the total amount of ground beef times the price of ground beef, plus the total amount of dried beans times the price of dried beans, plus the total amount of lettuce times the price of lettuce, plus the total amount of potatoes times the price of potatoes, and finally the total amount of milk times the price of milk. Right now, all will be 0 because we haven't decided to purchase any of the products. We have to do the same for usage over here. I'm just going to enter it without saying it, but please try and follow along with my clicks. Nope. This gets a little time consuming, but it's important that you go slow to make sure you haven't made any mistakes. So we've entered the total amount of each product times the amount of calories in each product. And that's our usage of how much we will get. One more time. And again, 0 because we haven't decided to purchase any projects yet. We continue on, and this will be a little time consuming, so please bear with me. Again. Hit enter. 4 to go. Nope. My mistake. Again, enter. 0 because we haven't made any. 3 more. Two more. We hit enter at one final time. Nope, I made a mistake somewhere. I'll start again just to make sure I'm correct. All right, we've entered all of our relevant data. Now, as always, once all of this has been added in, we click on data, we go to our solver function. Our set objective is minimizing total costs. So we erase this and we click on B23. That's where we find total costs. We know we're trying to minimize. Now, changing variable cells. In this situation, we don't have 1 or 2 cells that we're trying to change. We have 7. So we click right here, and these are the 7 cells the computer is going to investigate. We make it simplex LP, and all we have to do right now is add in our variables. Our constraints. So the first one, usage of calories must be greater than or equal to total. We'll move this up a little bit. So we here, less than or equal to, right here. Greater than or equal to we add that. Our fourth constraint, we'll have a total of 8 constraints, obviously. Our fifth constraint. Our sixth constraint. Our seventh constraint. The last one, less than or equal to 30. We hit OK. So we have our 8 constraints written in with simplex LP. We know where the computer will run permutations, and we know we're ultimately trying to minimize our total cost. So we hit solve here, and we see that all constraints and optimality conditions are satisfied. OK. And we see it's 1.67 dried beans, 0.30 potatoes, 1.5 milk, for a minimum cost of 2.87, which is exactly what we found in section 1. So hopefully everybody's been able to follow along. This is a very basic problem, but it's solved. It's kind of the next level of problem solving. And here we've solved it in both QM and in Microsoft Excel. So hopefully everything is clear. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time.